Hey everyone, welcome to this month's Coach Developer Conference call. I'm Sam Callan, I'm your host, and joining me today is TJ Buchanan from US Lacrosse. And first I want to apologize to those who were getting my emails with the messed up date. I, for some reason, just could not get that straight. So anyway, that aside, a couple of little announcements here before I bring TJ on. For those of you who might be new, the recordings of all our past calls are available both on a YouTube channel, through Apple Podcasts, and also now Google Play. And the link to those is in the email that I sent out. And if you've not been getting that email, if you want to email me, and I will put up a slide later on that has my email address on it, because I realized I just didn't do that. But please, particularly Apple Podcasts, subscribe and leave a review, because it's really kind of funny how that works. With the more people who are subscribed and reviewed, it pops up easier. It's easier to find for people. And right now it's listed under my name, Sam Callan, and also as Coach Education. And if you do a version of that, you'll eventually find it. You'll see a couple of podcasts on there from me that I've done maybe back in the old days. And with that. So anyway, and also a quick reminder about the USCCE Coach Developer Conference coming up in Orlando in June. I hope everybody's going to be there. I said in June. It's just in a week or so. And hopefully folks are going to be there. If so, it'll be great to touch base and see you face to face. A couple of announcements about upcoming calls. July the 18th, I'm going to have Jessica Leahy on. She's written a book called The Gift of Failure, which is about how it's a good idea to let our kids fail. She's a former educator and a parent as well. And then August 14th, Daniel Coyle, who wrote the Culture Code. He also wrote the Talent Code. He is going to be the guest that month. And so if you haven't read the Culture Code, I highly recommend it. Jessica's book as well. But I think that if you've read Dan's previous work and like his writing style, I think you'll like Culture Code too. Just a quick reminder for those, if you want to send a chat message or something, and TJ's pretty good at, he's figured out how to access that, so he can see the questions come in. You can either direct them to him or me. If you take that little bubble up there that I've got circled, you can type in your question there, and we'll address those as we go along. All right, so TJ is the US Lacrosse Senior Manager, Technical Director for Athlete Development. TJ is a lacrosse coach himself. He's a former teacher and has a master's degree in education, which I think comes through if you hear TJ talking about ADM and the coaching practices. It's pretty evident he has a solid background in education. And part of the reason I want to get him on here is to talk about the parent engagement meeting and follow-up calls that we've had, just kind of bring everybody maybe up to speed on where that stands. And then also wanted to have him talk about what US Lacrosse is doing. So with that, let me, TJ, are you unmuted there?
I am, Sam.
Great. Hey, a couple of questions before we get in the parent engagement thing.
Absolutely.
Give folks a little bit of a history of lacrosse. I mean, it's really one of the oldest sports in North America.
It is the original American sport, played by the Native Americans way back before, Columbus and his buddies got lost and made a wrong turn and ended up here, and we were Europeanized, I guess you could kind of say. So, I mean, it's been around forever. It started as really what the Native Americans called a medicine game. It wasn't so much of a competition per se as it was more of a spiritual kind of ritualistic type of game. That they would use, if someone was sick, they would get together and celebrate, by playing this game. It was also used, in other areas or other avenues to sometimes, settle tribal disputes over land or something like that. They would play. But it looked nothing like the game that, you might see on ESPN or somewhere like that nowadays. Fields could be miles and miles long between villages, and each side could have hundreds of players. On the field at a time. So, then when the Europeans got here, they kind of started to standardize it, and somebody would probably be a better history fact checker than I, but somewhere around the 1800s or so, a standardized set of rules were kind of placed around the game, and field dimensions and number of athletes on the field, so on and so forth, and started to really take the shape into the modern game that we see today.
Very cool. And the sport has grown tremendously in the last 10 or 15 years or so. I mean, for a while it seemed like this was very much a northeastern, mid-Atlantic state sport, and it just seems like it's exploded across the country. I mean, out here in the Denver, Colorado Springs area, we've seen tremendous growth. Maybe talk a little bit about the growth and what you think led to that.
Yeah, so we still are very heavily in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast, with probably the densest population of lacrosse playing persons, people, kids, adults, whatever. But you're absolutely correct. We are seeing the westward expansion, if you will, from this area, and I think it's a variety of factors because of the growth that we see on the East Coast. As those people, go off to college and they go and take jobs out in, let's say, California as an example, and they say, hey, man, there's no lacrosse out here. What am I going to do? Right? And so they go and they get their own program started. And when you have, quality people who have played at a high level showing up in those areas, it's kind of the impetus that's needed to get this thing going. I also think that, we still, in some of these non-traditional areas, the Colorados, the Idahos, whatever of the world, we have a lot of that, what I would call the X Games factor, where, the parents don't know enough to interfere with their kids' experience just yet, or the coaches don't even know enough, and so the kids want to try it because it's cool, it's new, and, they're kind of learning right alongside the parent, the coach, et cetera, as the game is developing out there. And it creates kind of a unique or a different type of environment for kids in those non-traditional communities where the game is growing. Over the last 10, 15 or so years, in the early 2000s, we were seeing double-digit growth per year, 11, 12, 13% even over those years. We have started to plateau a little bit. We're down into the single-digit growth. But as with anything, we are still growing, and we're one of the few sports that is consistently still growing, even though our growth has slowed a little bit.
And of course, there's a collegiate NCAA, and then there's also a professional league too, which is I catch those on TV, and we hear a lot about it because we have a professional team up in Denver that's pretty popular. So you guys have a neat pathway as far as that goes.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We have a men's professional league that is continually growing and attracting a little bit more fan base every year. The women's game now has actually 2 professional leagues going on, so there's a place for people to play after their college experience. We're still not in that Major League Baseball, NHL, NFL realm of things with what these athletes are being compensated for their time, effort, and I'll say entertainment. But it's coming along. There's a couple of athletes that they're making a full-time go of this at the professional level, between playing in the indoor box game, playing in the professional field leagues, as well as some endorsement deals, and being able to leverage their name and their brand, so to speak, to put on camps and clinics, and they're piecing together a pretty decent living.
Very cool. Well, I'm gonna screen over to you here, and whoops, sorry about
that. No worries, we're good, Sam.
And yeah, here we go. And talk a little bit about the parent engagement project that I'm going to say you guys kicked off at Lacrosse, and kind of how that meeting came about and what's been happening so far with it. And we're in the very, very early stages of this.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do, Sam. So, as at US Lacrosse, as we started looking at athlete development, we really wanted to try and figure out, who is our primary audience, and, who should we be addressing if we really want to impact and incite change, for the better for, aspiring lacrosse athletes. And we kind of boiled it down to, 3 groups. We have the coaches, right? They're directly on the field with the athletes and can really impact the way the kids experience the sport, right? We have the athletes themselves. So, what kind of, tools, resources, information, experiences can we provide to the athlete to help them, better enjoy the sport? And then, there's the parent piece, and parents are a huge component in this journey that kids are on for athlete development. And I always like to say, picture it like a three-legged stool with, the parent, the athlete, and the coach. If we take away any one of those legs, the entire system is going to fail, right? If the parents aren't on board, the stool tips over. If the coaches aren't on board, it tips over. If the athletes aren't, same thing. It's going to tip over. And so we really felt it was necessary to address each of these groups. As we, started down the ADM road, in 2016, we focused heavily on coaches. We wanted to get the most bang for our bucks right out of the gate by, engaging with the coaches and providing them with materials to, just do things differently. We goes without saying the dropout rates in youth sport and, all the things that lead to that. So we thought, hey, let's get after the coaches first and really try to provide them with some tools that are going to help them provide kids with a great experience. That included a variety of, drills, and I really don't like the word drills anymore. I'm leaning more towards using the terminology of games with our athletes and activities as opposed to drills. So we provided them with that. We've begun revamping our entire coach development program to align the content and the curriculum, whether it's the online stuff or the live in-person clinics, so that the coaches are experiencing it in that way, again, to go out and impact the kids. We launched in 2017 some what I would call athlete experience events, basically camps and clinics, but the idea being we want to be, as the national governing body, provide a first-class, best experience for a kid who is brand new to lacrosse or is just learning the sport. We've also begun venturing into, the further development pathway of, hey, once a kid's played for a couple of years, what does that look like? And we're just about ready to release some information on a national team's development program, but I'm not nearly qualified enough to talk about all that entails. But perhaps that's another podcast for you for another time, Sam. And then in 2018, we decided, okay, so we've hit the coaches, we've hit the athletes. Now we need to get after the parents, because parents are also a major influencer in the child's, sport experience. And it wasn't so much, that how to be a great sideline parent and not harass the officials and leave the coach alone and let them do their job. It was more of how do we engage with the parents and provide them with the tools and the resources and the information to take a look at how their child is experiencing the sport and say, hey, this is either really good for my kid or this is broken and I don't want to spend my money, putting my kid into a place that I'm not getting the most bang for their buck or return on investment, and my kid's not enjoying it, my kid's not getting any better, whatever those things would be. So, that led us down this path. And as we started getting into the work, I reached out to Chris Snyder and I said, hey, Chris, we're all doing this kind of stuff, right? All of the governing bodies, we're trying to figure this thing out of, how do we engage the parents to help incite the change that we want to see with ADM? And so what do you think about, let's get everybody together here in Baltimore, or we do it in Colorado, whatever, we're happy to host. It's not a problem for us. But let's get everybody together and let's see if, 20 minds are smarter than one or two working independently. Chris thought it was a fantastic idea. And from his role with coaching education at the USOC, he said, hey, you know what, we can back this, we can support this, so let's get this thing in motion. And that's, really what led to, this summit of some sort that we had a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. TJ, just a quick thing. I'm not seeing your screen. I don't know if the request went through or not on that. But I was at that meeting, and had representatives, and I apologize if I leave someone out here. There we go. There's your screen. We had folks from tennis. They were very well represented. Golf and volleyball, and there you go. Great graphic on that one, and swimming. So as you can see, it's a well-rounded group. We had team sports in there. We had individual sports. We've got sports that are very new to the Olympic movement. golf being the newest member of that group, and welcome to golf, who started with the Olympics in Rio. And then you guys in football are part of the family, although you're not represented at the Olympic Games. I imagine one day lacrosse will be in there.
Sam, I always like to say we're like the little brother that gets to sit at the cool kids table, and we reap all of the benefits of the conversation and the sharing of resources and information. Yet we're not beholden to some of the things that everybody else is. And we obviously don't receive any funding from the USOC. But
and I think you guys have done a tremendous work with the ADM and stuff. So, but how about before we get to that, let's talk about maybe just a quick summary of some of the things that came out of that the parent engagement meeting. And I think it's really important. And I'll admit, at that meeting, I was guilty of this, of really thinking about this in terms of what term do we use when we're talking about this parent engagement. I think we kind of all agreed we like that phrase, because we talked about parent education, which sounds a little condescending. What do I need educated on? And a lot of this too is some frustrations in dealing with parents, and how do you deal with parents, and that sort of has a negative connotation as well. So why don't you maybe go through and hit your points there?
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of slides here, Sam, but and you kind of touched on that first one, and the big thing, as Sam said, is the idea of we're going to educate you, right? And that puts the hackles up on a lot of parents' necks right away, right? And so a major thing that came out of this meeting is, how do we engage with the parents? Because at the end of the day, we all have the same goals for the athlete, whether it's the coach, whether it's the governing body, whether it's the parent. We want the kids to go as far as they can in the sport that they choose, or in multiple sports that they choose, and as far as they desire to go. So we felt that, coming out of this meeting, that engagement was a huge piece, because at the end of the day, we do need to shift that conversation from dealing with parents to working with parents based on everybody having those same goals. And so how do we do that? That was something we wanted to talk about. The other piece of this meeting was, if we're all doing the same thing and we're all trying to say the same thing, why are we each doing it in a relatively unique way, or outside of each other, when we're all preaching multi-sport, and we're preaching the collaboration between sports so that a soccer player can play lacrosse and soccer, or basketball can play hockey and basketball, right? But yet we're all kind of operating in this vacuum, or in this bubble of, well, this is, what is best for your kid coming from lacrosse. And while it may be similar to what is coming out from, fencing, right, it's not the same. And we really felt that if we're all in this thing called youth sports together, and we're all behind athlete development and the concepts and science of long-term athlete development, then it's probably a good idea that we speak the same language, and we provide common tools and resources. And that those tools, resources, whatever it is that comes out at the end of the day, shows a unified front across all of the sports. That it's not just one of us saying it, it's Team USA saying it, per our follow-up call the other week, Sam, that it's Team USA, and Team USA is made up of lacrosse, basketball, soccer, field hockey, whoever, right? It's all of us. So we thought that was really important to put basically those two big buckets together. And within them, we kind of came up with some central themes of, what we wanted to communicate, or what we want to communicate. So the idea of, what's the parent's role? Is it to just put their kid in the minivan and drive them to practice and games, drop them off, go get some Starbucks, come back 2 hours later? We don't believe so. But how do we communicate that, right? And we felt that was really important. The next was the idea of process over outcomes. I absolutely loved, the Philadelphia 76ers this year, kind of working under that motto, or that theme of trust the process, right? But again, when we look at the youth sport market, we're very heavily focused on the outcomes, and even parents are there, jumping their kids from one program to the next, hoping for that next gold medal, or, national championship that you seem to be able to win every weekend at some, location throughout the country. But, development is about a process. It's not about an outcome. And so we wanted to make sure we're providing clear and consistent communication about that. The idea of winning off the field, right? That sports is about a lot more than just what happens, in the training environment or, the actual sport-specific skill and activity. That it can develop a whole lot more things: healthy, active lifestyles, fitness for life, the ability to work in teams, the networking connections that are made. All of that, we call it maybe tertiary stuff, but yet so valuable that comes from participating in sport. The idea that, there's a couple of different routes that kids take in their athletic experience, right? Some are on a performance pathway and some are on a participation pathway. And neither is right and neither is wrong. It's just what fits the athlete best. So how do we communicate that to the parent, as well as helping them to identify which one is their kid and which one is right for their kid? Inspiring athletes for lifelong success. Again, that ties back to the winning off the field. The research and data is out there that, the United States as a whole is winning a race to being the most obese country in the world. Pretty sure that's a race we don't want to win. And so lifelong success could be in health. It could be a productive member of society because you work well in a group setting with, teammates. For those that are, single athlete sports, such as, Sam with fencing, lifelong success has a different meaning there. How do I overcome obstacles? How do I persevere, right? How do I adapt to ever-changing situations? So communicating that sport can do all of this, and this is how the parent can help make these things happen for their athlete. So we had a couple of desired outcomes, right? And, the biggest piece of this, if we had to summarize it to three main points, was, Team USA, again, comprised of all of the governing bodies here, we want as many kids as possible participating for as long as possible with the best experience possible. And I think that really sums up what athlete development is about. Certainly, we want kids, going into that higher level play and, maybe one day ending up on the podium representing the United States in international competition or the Olympics. But at the end of the day, that is such a small fraction of sport participants that, we really wanted to focus on this main theme centralized area. So we, trying to put some of those things into action, and one of my colleagues here at US Lacrosse, Aaron Smith, who's our Director of Education and Training, did a great job of summarizing these, and she's kind of the chairperson of the working group that came out of our meeting, and she put together some thoughts that we've been kicking around and working through as we continue to develop this, communal effort towards engaging with the parents. But the idea was we got to hit them in their hearts, right? We got to show them the why, the what's in it for me, and how's this going to make a difference for my kid, and and punch them right where it feels, so that there's an emotional connection to doing the right thing for their child, or providing the right experience for their child. We had to hit them in the head, so to speak, right? Not literally, just kind of figuratively, but use things that just make sense, right? And that it's easy to understand and easy to relate to, right? So that, it's kind of a no-brainer that, yeah, these are the things that should be happening for my athlete. And then finally, address their hands. Put things in their hands that make it possible for them to, assist and engage with the coaches and work with the program administrators or whoever it may be, so that their athlete is having the best experience possible. So next comes up the kind of million-dollar question here of, well, how will we engage with this group? Parents are all over the place, right? So how are we going to get in front of them? And that's some of the things we're working through right now. But the baseline of where we're headed with this is identifying how and where we can best reach the parents. Is that via some kind of mobile app? Is it advertisements on Amazon.com? Is it flyers at the grocery store, or stand-up displays in the community library? We don't really know right now. We're still talking through and figuring some of these pieces out. But we think that's really important to identify where we can really reach and make a difference for the parents. Making it easy for them, right? And not just for the parents, but also for, the sport providers. There's a pretty good number of sport providers that are, they're on board with this stuff, but it's, can be relatively difficult if you don't have the luxury of spending all day, working on this stuff and figuring out how you're going to do it. So how can we make it easy? What are some very simple, actionable things that we can provide that will help them do the right things? Make it relevant, right? And that's always the huge selling point, right, of whatever you're trying to sell is what's in it for me, right? And that's the world we live in nowadays. So how can we make this relevant to the parents so that they look at it and they say, hey, this fits my situation, right? Or if it's a youth sport program provider and they want to engage with their parents, how can we make it relevant to that club or that organization so that they feel empowered to drive it down or work with the parents for it? And obviously the local empowerment. Sitting in our, and I've heard this term thrown around a couple of times, and even over our couple of days together, Sam, is sitting in our ivory towers at the NGB level. It's really difficult for us to implement change. We have to have the people with the boots on the ground, the grassroots, if you will, feel empowered and be equipped to be able to make these changes that we wish to see. So that's kind of the summary of our meeting. I don't want to dive into USL. I'll take a little break here, Sam. Maybe some questions came out as I was doing that. I apologize. I didn't look at the chat bubble there while I was going through slides, but
No, quite all right. I had sent a message out. Anybody have any questions for TJ, either put them in the chat bubble, or we have such a small group. If you just type in there, hey, I got a question, we'll unmute you and you can ask it yourself. I think one of the things with this, maybe give people a chance to get their thoughts here is, one of the big things that I like about having this group working together is that, you have a large staff at your NGB. I know you probably would like to have more staff, but as someone who's been around this world since about 1997, you guys have, hockey has a big staff, swimming has a big staff, in fencing we have a small staff, and there are NGBs, and we have 17 full-time employees, I think, and we've got another one we share a building with. I think they have 5, and others have 3. And so a lot of this really can benefit those smaller NGBs that don't have the resources to put this together, and that's a lot of folks that we might end up reaching out there. I think of my neighbors over here at table tennis. They just they've got good staff, but they're kind of focused in a really narrow world, and they want to have this stuff, but they can't do it on their own. So that's my little preaching. So why don't you go in to talk about what Lacrosse is doing in terms of parent engagement? I sat in on one of the live webinars that you guys did and listened to a follow-up that you guys did. And why don't you share with folks what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we've really made the parent our primary focus for athlete development for this year. It doesn't mean we're not doing things for coaches or we're not doing things for athletes, but, everything that is our primary objective is geared towards the parent when we're putting things together. There we go. So obviously, we're utilizing social media, and whether that's sharing articles, sharing research, blog postings, so on and so forth. We're trying to get parent messaging, parent-focused messaging out in front, through our various marketing communication channels, right? I'll share one of these in a little bit, but we've really taken the core values of our athlete development model, and we broke them down into really simple infographics. Top 5 things you need to know about multi-sport participation, and on the flip side of it, the top 5 things you can do to help your child with multi-sport participation, right? As Sam alluded to, we've been doing a boatload of webinars. About a week or 2 ago, just finished up a 5-6 week series of parent-focused webinars. So we took our core values again of our athlete development model, and we kind of spun the language a little bit to say, hey, if you're a parent, this is how it applies to you. I like to use the example of, lacrosse practice, right? So we put together webinars when we were doing the coach piece that were how to run a great practice. And we put together a curriculum and a clinic for running a great practice for coaches. So we took that information, spun it around a little bit, tweaked the language, and made it for the parent group to say, how to identify a great practice? Are your coaches doing things that are really out there to help your child develop, or are they going through the motions, or are they somewhere in between, right? But we want to educate you as a consumer of youth sport, and that's really what a parent is, because they're writing the checks, they're signing the kids up, they're consumers at the end of the day. So how do we, engage with the consumer and provide them the information that they need to make informed decisions? And so, maybe a little bit controversial because, if you're a coach who's not doing some of these things, maybe we threw you under the bus a little bit. But, we're okay with that. We're comfortable with that because we're here for kids, and we want kids to have a great experience. And if, you're a coach who's doing the same thing that you learned back when you played in college in the 1980s, and you're doing that in 2018, you're failing the kids. And, in some respects, maybe you deserve to be called out a little bit for not, developing professionally and staying current, whether that's with, the technical and tactical aspects of the game, or, the information that we know now about how kids learn and grow and develop. But, we want to put you on the hot seat if you're not doing the right thing, and engage the parents and empower them to ask the questions of why aren't we doing this?
Well, TJ, I'm jumping on that for a second here too. You mentioned something really interesting. If they're doing the same, drills and that they were doing in college, but they're coaching 10-year-olds, probably not appropriate as well. 100%. And I see that a lot of like, well, I did that drill when I was in high school or college or something, and now so I'll just do it with the 10-year-olds, and it may be highly inappropriate to do that. And I don't mean inappropriate in a sort of way. I mean, it's just they're not ready for that. They haven't developed the other skills that you have by the time you get to high school or college as well. And so making them developmentally appropriate is really important as well. And absolutely. I know you guys do a good job with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I heard it maybe on John O'Sullivan or Stuart Armstrong's podcast, which I listen to pretty regularly. Not that I don't listen to yours, Sam. I tune into these too. But, it was, if your dentist was doing the same procedures that they did in the 1800s, you'd sue them for malpractice. But yet, with coaches, it's like, well, they were a Division I player in the 1980s. They're good enough to coach my kid. And we don't look at their professional qualifications or, making sure that they're current with what we know now that we didn't know then. So really important that we, call that out and call attention to it. We're currently in the process of building out a parent guide to athlete development. So, we're really fleshing that out and feeling out for what it's going to be. We're hoping to release it somewhere in the, December-ish time frame. But the idea being if we could put together a, small guide of, let's call it 30, 35 pages that addresses all of the things that are necessary and kind of outlines it by here's what you should expect for your 8-year-old athlete, your 12-year-old athlete, whatever. As well as things about nutrition and hydration and dose and duration, rest and recovery, right? So that the parent is empowered to really make great decisions, for their child. Because, my daughter loves carnival food, Sam, but at some point I've got to make sure she eats some broccoli, right? And so, if we can put those resources in front of parents regarding our sport, hopefully they can help steer things in the right direction. Right, we've been doing blog posts. We're almost pretty regularly, I'd say about once a month. We pick some hot topic in athlete development, whether it's relative age effect or should my kid play up or down, what age segment is appropriate for them. We pick some topics like that and, put together a 500 or so word blog posting, and again, communicate that out via, all of our various channels. That includes email blasts, social media, so on and so forth. Right. We're currently working on doing some, 30, 35 second-ish type explainer videos about our core values of athlete development and really how that applies to the parent aspect. It certainly they'll be ready for multiple audiences, but kind of saying, okay, if we're talking about multi-sport participation, what does that mean? Does it mean my kid signs up for an AAU basketball team, a club lacrosse team, their school lacrosse team, and a travel baseball team? Well, not necessarily, right? And we know multi-sport participation can be enjoying going out kayaking on the weekends, and that counts. So we're trying to, consolidate, a lot of those points into these really brief, short explainer type videos. What we know with video watching on social media, you've got about 35 to 40 seconds to get your message across, and, the people are on to the next posting. So we're currently working on those. And Sam, as you know, I share this stuff out whenever we come out with something new. I try to share it with as many governing bodies as possible using our network, so that, hey, if this helps you, great. And it might have a lacrosse theme on it, steal it, put your own branding on it. We're cool with that, because, again, we're all in this youth sport thing together, regardless of what our sport looks like when you play it. And obviously practical tools. Most recently, we're really big on physical literacy, and we felt that as an organization, we couldn't just say kids need to be physically literate and let them walk away, with just that. So we contracted with a youth sport specialist in the area of physical literacy. He put together an incredible manual, if you will, for us called 60 Ways to Play. Shameless plug, if you check out our website, you can download a free copy of it. But it's basically 60 different activities and circuits, if you will, that you can do with kids to help them improve their physical literacy. We all know that you have to be a mover before you can be an athlete, but far too often we jump right to trying to turn the kid into an athlete before they're a mover. So we're, really hyper-focused on providing tools like that, so coaches, parents, whoever, can get into that space and help their kid become a confident, competent mover, which is only going to benefit their athletic development. We're also using a little bit of what I would call outside-the-box methods. Yesterday being an example of it, I spent my entire day kind of driving around the Annapolis, Maryland area, meeting with financial advisors. And at first glance, you might be like, TJ, why are you meeting with financial advisors? Well, it certainly isn't because of, I have a pile of money to invest and I'm trying to find the best person. The idea is that, we meet with them and we're sharing and preparing presentations for these financial advisors because the people they work with have kids, and those kids participate in youth sport. And so when they meet with them, it's a way for them to build a relationship with their client beyond just, hey, give me your money and I'm going to make you more of it. It's, I can build that relationship and that, quasi-friendship, if you will, by talking to you about something that your kid is involved in. A kid is a parent's most valuable investment. So if these financial advisors can, speak a little bit knowledgeably and point the parent in the direction of, finding more information out about, athlete development, then, we're going to continually grow this thing. So it's an interesting tactic. It's been a lot of fun. I met with probably close to 50 over the course of the day yesterday. And the reaction from them is great. They ask fantastic questions, and a lot of them have children involved in youth sport as well. And so they're, right away we're hitting them right in the heart, and then we're hitting them in the head, and we're equipping them with the tools to not only educate or engage, with their programs, but also, their clients' programs. And the big one that we're kind of gearing up towards, in early 2019, we're going to be putting on a virtual parent summit. So kind of think of it, like Sam's webinar here or podcast, but a little bit juiced up. We're working on the format. Probably going to be about a full day with sessions starting, about every, on the hour, where maybe a 45-minute session with a 15-minute, 20-minute break in between, with presenters from all over, coming on and sharing what they know about athlete development and how the parent kind of plays into that. So we've certainly got our work cut out for us, and we've got our hands in a little bit of everything. As Sam mentioned, we do have a larger staff than most. However, our athlete development staff is only 2 people. And so, leveraging the power of a lot of the other governing bodies has helped us get all of this stuff put together and out there in front of the parents or the coaches or whoever our target audience is. So sharing just a couple of quick examples. I don't know if you want to have a screen capture, or Sam, I can email you this link if you want to email it out. But I thought I'd just share a couple of examples of the webinars. We're not going to go down the road of watching them, but just to give you an idea. So when we talked about physical literacy, the one at the top center there, ABCs of athleticism. And it was really focused around how, as a parent, do you help your child, develop the ability, balance, coordination to become more athletic. And then, again, using physical literacy as the vehicle for that. We have, some other ones. The 10,000 hours rule is a lie. That was a fun one. When we talk about sport specialization, lack of multi-sport participation, that type of topic, a lot of people believe because they read a book that, oh, my kid needs to have 10,000 hours of lacrosse training in, otherwise they're never going to be an expert. So we dove into a little bit of that and talked about what Anders Ericsson's study really said and how it was kind of misinterpreted, and how diversifying across sports can get to that 10,000 hours in helping your child be a better athlete. And then obviously the other topics there I already talked about, the how to spot a good practice and how to make lacrosse fun. That one was based a lot off of Dr. Visick from George Washington University's study on the fun maps and fun integration theory. But again, flipping it around to the parents of how can you help make your child's athletic experience fun? Talked about some of those infographics, so I just wanted to share those with you to get a kind of visual picture of what they are. So far left there, 5 reasons why your child should be a multi-sport athlete. Right? Quick, simple, easy to digest. And then on the flip side, if you would turn that paper over, right, 5 things you can do to promote it as a parent. Right? Again, very simple things. Make your kid go outside and play. Right? Give them the opportunity. Encourage sampling. Right? Say, and number 5 is probably my favorite. Is just say no to adults who want your child to specialize. There's that Reed Mulphy, John O'Sullivan, those guys talk about the whole fear of missing out factor. But we know the reality is multi-sport athletes achieve more and they go further in sport than specialized. And so, we spent a webinar on this as well as provided the infographics. So, we're doing the best we can and trying to get as much out there as possible to help engage with the parents and help them make healthy choices for their child's sport participation.
Hey, TJ, I made a few notes here. If you ever wanted to do a 6th one on that 5 things to promote multi-sport, in addition to the get them outside playing, maybe it's also combine that with a say no if an adult wants to come in and organize your free play. Tell them to get lost. That we're having fun here. Why is it you got to come in and adultify this whole thing?
Yeah. No, we have a whole webinar on the value of small-sided and free play.
Yeah. I that was one that I sat in on.
Yeah.
Also, going back, you mentioned you guys did one on debunking the 10,000 hour rule. Shameless USA Fencing promotion. I actually did an interview with Anders Ericsson on my USA Fencing podcast, and we talked about that and a little bit about how Malcolm Gladwell really did a bad job for youth sports with that, because the book was a bestseller. A lot of people read it, and kind of, I think, ran with this idea of, they did some quick arithmetic of 10,000 hours. My kid's 6. Let's see, 16. That's 10 years. I gotta give him 1,000 hours. That's 3 hours a day of practice. Okay, good, we go.
Yep.
And Anders has walked. I won't say Anders has walked that back, because it wasn't his fault. That was someone else who had misconstrued his research that was done on violinist. And there's some methodology things too. And if you've not read, I think David Epstein and the Sports Gene does a really good job of deconstructing that. And Anders has been interviewed on it several times and has kind of addressed that, this probably shouldn't be carried over past the group that we looked at with that. So, yeah, that's been one that's bugged me for a while now.
Yeah, 100%, Sam, 100%.
Yeah. Cool. All right, I want to, TJ, I'll let you finish up here, and then I want to show the USA Swimming has a really cool video that they sent out just about maybe a week or 2 weeks ago, and I was going to get the screen back in a moment and show that for folks who may not have seen it. It is probably one of the coolest multi-sport promotional videos that I've seen anyway out there.
Yeah,
So go ahead, why don't you finish up there?
Yeah, just to wrap up, I wanted to provide some contact information. We do have our own unique section of the US Lacrosse website there, so visit that. A lot of the resources and things that we've talked about are available there. So again, steal them, make them your own. We're okay with that. That's not a problem. We're in this thing together. And if you can't find it, my email address is there. Shoot me an email, and I will send you a link to it. Or if you want to see all of the infographics that we've put together, I am more than happy to send you the file, and you can print them out and duct tape your own logo over top of it. We're cool with that. We just believe that we're all in this thing together, and we want kids to have the best experience possible. So we're going to share whatever we can with whoever we can. And then finally, I put my phone number there. That's direct line to me. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, you just want to, talk lacrosse because your kid plays and it's fun for you, I'm cool with that too. So please feel free to reach out, whatever, whenever, wherever, and we will do our very best to help you as best as we can to make youth sports great for kids.
Yep. I think the sort of catchphrase earlier, as many kids as possible for as long as possible and the best experience possible is just such a great way to summarize what we're all, I think, trying to do with this.
Absolutely, Sam.
Yeah.
We can't keep losing kids.
Yeah, so hopefully this will work. So here is USA Swimming's, they have a Flex Swim membership that is a pretty cool program. In short, it's basically to allow kids who want to be competitive but don't want to do it full time to have that. So it's a neat program that just allows more kids to participate in competitive swimming without having to devote their entire life to it when they're 8 years old. And so hopefully this video and sound comes through okay on here. But this is their Flex Swim membership. So here we go. All right, I find that just pretty amazing, and a great promotion from USA Swimming. That had to have been really interesting to have to shoot as well. All right. Oh, it looks like you didn't see my screen on that, huh, TJ? Sorry about that. I didn't do that. Right. Okay. I will put the link to. Sorry about that, guys. I'll put the link to the to their Flex Pass in there and stuff. And you know what? I'll even let's try this again. It's so good. I'll run it again. There, hopefully everybody could see that one with that. All right. One last chance for anybody to ask some questions or comments before we wrap up here. All right, I'm not seeing any. So just a quick reminder, our next call will be on July the 18th with Jessica Leahy, and then on August 14th with Daniel Coyle. These will, the call from TJ here will be posted, I don't know, the next couple of days, see how quickly I can get around to getting it up on YouTube and onto the iTunes or Apple Podcast. So TJ, once again, thanks for sharing what Lacrosse is doing and the parent engagement project that several of us are involved in, and sharing what US Lacrosse is doing.
Absolutely, Sam. Thank you for having me on. Always enjoy sharing what we're doing, and hopefully this will spark, some conversation with other folks who want to get on board and join the movement.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate those who joined us, and I'll put some notes in the show notes for this so that you've got access to the link to USA Swimming. If you just go to USA Swimming Flex, it'll pop up pretty quickly on Google search. All right. So thanks, everybody.